Namaste. I'm Cristi Christensen. I am an author, a teacher, and a wellness leader. So excited to be here on Call Empath.
You're listening to the On Call Empath Show.
Very special episode on the Elite Coaches series. I have Cristi Christensen, who is an author, teacher, and global wellness leader. It is a true honor to have you on my podcast. I've been waiting for this for quite some time. Thank you so much for joining me.
You are so welcome, and the honor is all mine. It's always a treat when someone hears you on another podcast and was like, "Oh, I want to interview her for mine." So
I mean,
that was
yeah,
when I got your message.
I was like, I had to have her on my podcast because you've done so much, and I don't know where to start. So I'm just gonna kind of have you just kind of tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are. I know that you've been through, a lot of injuries with your back. You went for the Olympics. You started out when you were small in the gym. Your mom, you started out when you were 2, and you just didn't let go. You just kept going and going. And that's why I love that energy. And I just want you to share that with the audience. And I'd let you kind of explain how you got where you are.
Okay, I'll see how it goes. This is always a tricky one. The older you get, it gets trickier. You're like, ooh, what do I include and what do I leave out?
Right.
Basically, my life has been a journey through movement, we could say. As you mentioned about my mother was a dancer, and she had me dancing by the time basically I could walk.
Yeah.
And dancing led to gymnastics, and gymnastics led to diving, specifically platform diving. And which caused me I moved home at 15 to train at a junior Olympic training center. Like, this was my life. It was my life goal. It was nothing existed outside of this realm of making the Olympics and hopefully even winning a medal. And I have overcome many injuries. I broke many bones, had many surgeries. And I always believed that with every injury, even though it was a huge setback, that it was going to make my story of success that much better. What was so difficult about the final injury I had when I broke my back, training for it was the 2004 Olympics, was I couldn't believe it was over. I was like, no, like I am just going to overcome this.
Mm-hmm.
I never took into consideration that my dream was going to end on someone else's terms, so to speak, or it was, I guess it was on my own terms. My body was saying no more, but I did not want to admit that. And at 24, I had no other dream. I had no other goal. I didn't know who I was beyond this diver, this athlete, this, training to be the Olympian of how, everybody referred to me. And when the doctor said to me, by 30, you're going to be walking with a cane. And if you want to have kids, you're not going to be able to pick them up. He's like, that's how much damage you've done to your spine. So if you do not stop now, like I can't even go in to say what might happen to you. So there was really no choice. Right. And I was devastated. I went through a period of time where I dealt with really intense anxiety and depression. And those were new things for me. Yeah. So I felt not only disoriented because I wasn't training and doing what I loved and what I was so passionate about, and that zest that I had for life and living was missing. But then I was going through these like extreme ups and downs. I was like, who am I? Like, who is this? Like, I actually thought I was going mad. Like, I was like, I must be losing my mind.
Yeah.
And if this is what life is, I don't know if I want it.
Yeah.
Like, that's really, really where I was. And I say this a lot, that I think in those moments when we really do not know what to do, and for someone listening that might sound like, oh, you went through this just because you didn't make the Olympics, they may not be able to understand. But in that moment in my life, this was the most traumatic thing I had gone through.
Yeah.
And it was like my life was over. It really was. So I was invited to my first yoga class.
Yeah.
And at that point, to me, I didn't know what yoga was. I thought it was some form of exercise. It wasn't cool. It wasn't popular then, but Madonna was doing yoga
Oh, back then, right. In the
back then.
90s.
And she was like on the cover of like Time magazine and like with like her legs behind her
Sure.
head, her muscles ripped. And I remember being like, okay, like if yoga's good enough for Madonna, I guess it's good enough for me.
Right.
So I went to the first class and with this friend that took me, and that just slowly started to, change my life and change the trajectory of my life. And I slowly, and I emphasize the word slowly, started to wake back up and actually come back into touch of who I was as a being, who I was as a soul, not who I was as a diver or as an athlete or as a performer, and who just actually the essence of Cristi was. And the real essence of who I am is joy, is love. And I was so disconnected from those things. And that's why, I really believe the reason that we experience so much anxiety is because we are actually, part of us is fractured, right? And we're not in touch with actually the essence of who we know who we are, even beyond the logical mind. And it's so uncomfortable, but we don't know how to get back.
Yeah.
So what happens is, our energy goes in these big ways. And so over time, that really the practice of yoga and the discovery of the chakra system really became this roadmap that I didn't know I was looking for.
Right.
Because I didn't know what spirituality is. I didn't know what energy was. Like, these weren't things that, now we hear these words, in everyday language, right? Or we can, like, even my mom now is like, oh, that energy stuff. Where, 20 years ago, I was like, what do you mean my energy body?
Right.
What's that?
It's amazing. Amazing story. So, I mean, you got to the highest level, like Olympics, and then just kind of going back. I mean, you were a victim of abuse, and you used the gym to kind of, I don't want to say, just kind of get your life back. That was like your place that you used to go to kind of de-stress. What would you say? Because there's a lot of people that tune in that are abuse victims, and then they do maybe stuff that are not very healthy and things like that. When you're at a point where you were told like you cannot go any further, and maybe your whole outlook just was crushed, you could have gone either way. You could have went the wrong route. A lot of people go to addiction, drugs, alcohol, but you kept on track and you were going to the gym even with a broken back, or how did that all?
So let me backtrack just a little bit. I was a victim of physical and sexual abuse as a very, very young girl. So much so that I actually didn't know until I was much older.
I see.
But the way no one pushed me into athletics. Like, a lot of people assume because I was so dedicated at such a young age that I had those kind of parents, like the gymnastics parents you hear about, that they're like, we're going to make you. My parents didn't push me at all. Like, I actually would get mad at them because I was like, don't you want me to be the best? For me to be the best, I have to go to gymnastics before school and after school, and I can't go on vacation. And I really believe that drive was, yes, love for the sport, because I would do it all over again, even with all the injuries, for sure. But it was my safe place. So I think part of my drive unconsciously, like, the body's so smart, being at the gym was safe for me. And training all those hours was safe for me. And if I succeeded in competition, that meant actually I would go up to the next level, which means I would be at the gym even more. And then I would be traveling even more to competitions, which eventually led me to move away by the time I was 15. So that's how I make sense of it now, because nobody else in my family is like that. And of course, I've gone to lots of therapy, and I think some of that drive was to actually allowed, like if I said earlier that like really that essence of me is joy, that's what allowed that to stay intact and not be destroyed.
Yeah.
And so, but what happened to me, which I skipped over when I was saying that before, is like, yes, my identity and all those things, but because all that overtraining and all of that kept me from having to deal with the real trauma underlying everything, that when that was stripped away, also the anxiety and the depression came from
surfaced,
started these things that I didn't actually even know to be true started coming up. And that's where really, really challenging. And I coped with a lot of unhealthy ways too. I never did really go the route of drugs and alcohol. But food became, and that started even when I was an athlete still. And it's very common in any kind of abuse victims, right? They have so that food was something I could control or go to the other extreme and be out of control with. So at first when I stopped diving, that got much worse. My relationship with food and with anorexia and bulimia kind of flipping back and forth, just like kind of the anxiety and the depression flipping back and forth. And I'm very lucky because for all practical purposes, I probably should not be here. And I do believe that even though I was this high level athlete, I had this amazing ability to not be in my body most of the time. Until and that's where that fracture was for me, that I could exist out here and not have to feel what was going on in here. And I think that's also how I dealt with all the injuries and the pain, because I couldn't leave the body. So I wasn't even fully feeling the full impact of all my injuries either, if that you can even imagine that to make sense. But then going into the practice of yoga, I started to feel everything. Even in the simplest way of actually just feeling my hands pressing down into the ground, and then feeling the breath moving into the back of my body, and feeling my rib cage expand, and feeling life moving through, so from the most tactile to the most subtle, to then once we start to feel the physical body, we're going to start to feel the emotional body. And once we breathe into the physical body, we're going to breathe into the places with all the things that have been suppressed, denied, rejected and stored in the body at the cellular level. So in many ways, like yoga, the chakras, saved my life.
Yeah. And I want to get to the chakra system and have you kind of explain that. I know that on Gerd's podcast, you mentioned the lotus. I'm very fascinated with that. Also, I have a pretty big tattoo on my arm for the lotus flowers peeling back all the way down to like my arm here.
Wow.
Because it represents to me, like you're always changing. We don't have a destination. And it seems like what you've went through from beginning to now, you're constantly changing. There is no end destination. Can you explain how that metaphor a little bit?
Yeah. So the lotus flower, it's a beloved symbol for the chakra system and for just spirituality and yoga overall. But the chakras, each of them are actually described as a flower with a certain amount of petals. And the one that's at the crown of the head is said to have 1,008 petals unfurling. And in yoga, the number 1,000 or 1,008 is the number for the infinite. So it's this idea of this infinite unfolding of consciousness literally, like the wisdom of the seventh chakra is that we are boundless, right? That evolution without limits is possible when we stay open, when we stay aligned, when we stay connected. And that also leads to unlimited possibilities, unlimitless discoveries, not just of who we are, but who we can become and what we can do in the world. And what is so beautiful about the metaphor here is that a lotus can only grow in the mud.
I didn't know that.
It grows in the darkness. It grows in the muddy soil, of the earth, of the swamp, of the water, whatever, however you want to visualize it. And this is the representation of the spiritual journey, that for us to really blossom and bloom into our full potentiality, we have to be willing to go down into our own darkness, into our own shadows, into our own unconscious, to all the places within us that we do cast away, that we do deny, that we do suppress. Or it's also, as one of my teachers says, the shadow is also our greatness, that place that we're afraid to touch that greatness. Right. So being willing to go down in that and not bypass it, but actually go right through it. And through the darkness, we start to search through for the light. So just like the lotus, it starts here and then it starts to search for the light. So there's a deep honoring that happens. There's a deep nourishment, right? We even think about being in the womb. We grew in the darkness of the womb for 9 months when we were inside of our mother. So we are also deeply nourished by this darkness, by the mud, by the soil, by the earth. And we're searching for the light. We're searching for the light, not to deny what's in the darkness, but to bring what's in the darkness to the light. And what's so beautiful about the lotus is once it gets there, it's completely untarnished. It's not covered in mud anymore. The most beautiful flower, right? Whether it's pink or gold or white or rainbow, it just opens up to the light. It blossoms in the light. It's nourished by the darkness and it's brightened by the light. And that's the spiritual journey, right? We have to have our roots down deep. We have to be willing to go inside, right? So that we can actually, in a healthy, integrated whole way, can really open to spirit, to divine, to God, to goddess, to higher consciousness, and allow that infinite unfolding to happen.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So powerful too, it just represents kind of who you are, also like how you got to where you are today. So
it represents who you are too.
Yeah,
we're all, it represents us all, and
we're all of us. And I mean, like I said, a lot of people tuning in, they've been through abusive relationships, narcissist abuse, all these types of things. And a lot of them ask me, like, when am I going to get out of this darkness? When is it going to stop? And sometimes we have to go through all of that, just like the mud and blossom. So, thank you for sharing that. So,
and I'd love to just
go ahead.
Another thing, like for anyone that is in that place of when am I going to be out of this darkness? Something that helped me dramatically is this idea of wholeness. Is if we think of it as a circle, right? One side of us is in the dark, but the other side is still in the light. Like we're never lost completely in the darkness. And just because we're going through something that maybe brought us to our knees or something that is challenging beyond measure, it does not mean we've lost access to all the good in the world. And I think there's a saying that I love that, part of this human experience is be able to hold simultaneously the joy and the terror of what it is to be alive. So we can be connected. And I use the word joy in a very blissful and a very enlightened way, not as a frivolous emotion, but as like an emotion of like just utter life and living. And in that, right, is this other side of sorrow or disgust, or, we have all these different emotions and we don't want to trade one for the other. We actually want to expand our bandwidth to be able to hold them all and then dance between them. So just because I'm in a place of struggle, it doesn't mean I've lost access to also that place of joy, and it doesn't, it's not to belittle someone's situation if you're suffering right there, but just you can keep that seed of hope alive, that half of you actually is right now brightening in the light.
Just powerful things, just I hope you guys are getting a lot of this, because I can definitely feel it. So I want to ask you a little bit about yoga, because I know a lot of people that are tuning in, they see what they see on the media,
right?
And back in the 80s, like the yoga pants and all that jazz and the Om. Um, what are some myths? Because like when some people do think about it, they think about being in a pretzel and maybe in a heated room and doing all these moves, but it is so much more than that. Can you explain? Because I know you have your own technique
Mhm.
as well. So
Yeah.
can you explain, like, just to the audience, like what yoga is and what it's not really? I mean, because we think about it.
Yeah. I mean, to me, yoga is everything. Like literally, like to me, yoga is everything. Yoga is life. The word itself, and this is why it gets convoluted in a lot of ways, right? Um, the word itself comes from the root, which is yuj, which means to
Mhm.
yoke or to join or to ignite, right? It's this coming together, just like my fingers are interlocking now, this coming together of mind, body, heart, spirit into wholeness, into unification, first within yourself and then with the world around you.
Mhm.
So it's about bringing consciousness, awareness, breath. That's why breath is so important to the yoga practice, and brings us, the breath calls us into presence, into the here and now, where we can actually impact change and heal and evolve and grow.
Mhm.
And the world of Instagram has, maybe broadened the landscape of yoga, but it also in many ways has created these myths that yoga is doing a handstand, or yoga is being a size 2 model, or
Right.
yoga means you have to be on the beach at sunset, doing your pose perfectly. And for me, the practice of yoga, of the physical practice of yoga, it's first and foremost an embodiment practice about coming home to your body, like I was saying before, of like feeling your hands on the ground, feeling your spine extending, feeling the strength of your body. So at first is this practice of coming home to your body, feeling your body, and strengthening the vessel in which your soul resides.
Mhm.
you know and the alignment is really just important, to keep you safe, of course, but also to allow this free flow of the energy to move through you, right? And then the breath guides it all and brings it
Mhm.
all together. And so what I'd like to tell people is that, like, first of all, like, I don't practice yoga to be good at yoga.
Mhm.
Like, I practice yoga to be good at life and to
Mhm.
be a better person. Because when I don't do yoga, I am most people don't believe this, but I'm kind of cranky. I'm not as like, it works out all my aches and pains. I'm not as comfortable in my body. I'm not as clear in my mind. I'm not as connected to my heart. And I'm not as connected to my emotions, because the body is the gateway in. We start with the physical, and then from a grounded place, just like we need the lotus flower to be rooted
Yes.
down into the earth, right? From this grounded place, it's more safe to feel the emotions that I'm feeling. And now I know, in those moments where I'm restricting movement, where I'm like, no, I don't want to practice today, it's a signal. It's like, okay, what's going on? What don't you want to feel? Like,
Yes.
because it's like we put on this armor of protection, and what does armor do? It keeps us safe, but it also keeps us from moving. So first and foremost, it's an embodiment practice. And then as we go deeper into our body, it sounds counterintuitive, but as we go like deeper into ourselves, we can connect more deeply to our emotions, to our hearts, to actually how we feel. And then it becomes a liberation practice, to free us
Yeah.
from the limited constructs of our body. It frees us from the limited constructs of our mind. And for me, it connects me to spirit.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Again, when I began yoga, I didn't know. I thought yoga was just exercise. So that would be the other myth, that yoga is just
Yeah,
handstand,
I was gonna
size 2
say.
models, and that yoga is only exercise. You absolutely can get amazing health benefits physically from yoga, but
Sure.
that's just one aspect. That's just one
Yeah.
aspect. But that's the gateway in. So if you just want to feel better in your body, right? If you have some aches and pains, and having breath and space in your body is going to make you feel a lot better. Moving in your body, moving your joints in all these different directions is going to be very healing for anyone. And then it kind of opens the door, and we can go into these other layers of our own being. And we have, just like the lotus, can keep unfurling into more.
I mean, I'll say, like, I used to work out. Well, I still work out, but when I did one yoga session, it was like the hardest workout that I've ever done, just because you're holding those poses. And my misconception was like, what is this going to do for me if I hold a pose for this long? It was like lifting weights for like an hour and a half. Like, it was like the same intensity. I was sweating, I was shaking, like my muscles were shaking, and I felt like I was doing something good for my body.
Absolutely. Like, it's the best like, I mean, I was an athlete my whole life. Like, I've done every kind of modality there is to do, right? And so I'm not telling you stop everything else you're doing and only do yoga, but yoga is amazing cross training for anything else you're doing, because you're moving in your body. And the reason it was so difficult, because you were moving your body in a completely different way. So you were strengthening. And the beautiful thing about yoga is it's this coming together of strengthening and stretching to create the balance. So we create this notion of like an integration or an integrity in the whole system between building strength and flexibility, mobility. And then through that, we create a really beautiful synergy of balance within our bodies. Yeah. So no matter what you do, from golf to gym to tennis to whatever else, like, yoga will, on the pure physical level, not only the mental and emotional level, will absolutely enhance everything else you do,
including the mental part. Because
mental, for sure.
Anxiety, depression, even like, I know a lot of people have back pain like me. But as I grow older, I want to incorporate that for until like in my 50s, 60s, 70s, because there has been scientific fact that in longevity, like people that do that, it's in the science, so you can't really make it up.
No.
So
I mean,
you guys are listening.
So much of the yoga practice is about creating space in the body. And what happens to us as we get older? We shrink, right? We shrink the liquid in between our joints, the synovial fluid in our body. It dries up. Instead of being a plump grape like we were when we were born, we start to become a raisin, right? So it's all of this. So what does yoga do? So we're going to breathe into, and we're going to stretch our body. We're going to create space back into back into all the places, back into the joints. Allow the synovial fluid to keep moving, right? To nourish all the joints and the tissues, so that we can, it's almost like a WD-40. You took the Tin Man and, WD-40'd his whole body every day. Like, and then he'd be able to go out through his day and feel good. Same with us. That's what the yoga practice does with the physical body when we do it with conscious, awareness.
Well, that was like a lot of information. I hope you guys are getting a lot out of it. But before we take off, I want to give you kind of like the last word to maybe somebody had tuned into this podcast. They've never really tried yoga, and they're a little apprehensive about going forward, and they're dealing with anxiety, depression, maybe previous abuse. And they're just trying to make sense of their life. What would be like something they can do just to kind of introduce themselves to something like yoga? Or because some people, maybe they're not in the best shape, maybe they're a single mom or a single person who hasn't worked out in years, and they're kind of apprehensive. What can you recommend, or just kind of tell someone that, this is what you should try, like just in the beginning, without getting spooked?
I mean, here's the thing, like the beautiful thing about the yoga practice is it can meet you where you are at, as long as you can put the ego aside and don't sign up for an advanced yoga class. And I think that's what a lot of people do. And if you think about when you learned to ride a bike when you were a kid, you learned with training wheels, right? And then You took the training wheels off and you were successful, right? You didn't crash and burn. But if you didn't have those training wheels, what would have happened? The same things with anything new we're trying to learn. So, I would suggest right now, there's so many online resources.
Yes.
Where what's beautiful about that, as long as you show up, is that you can do it in the privacy of your own home, and be in an environment where you feel safe and you feel comfortable, right? And you can begin to learn that way. But on your own, if you're dealing with anxiety and depression or whatever it might be, start with your breath.
Yeah.
Either sit grounded or stand and feel your feet on the ground. Like you can close your eyes, you can and if closing your eyes doesn't feel good, don't close them. Like, I like to touch my physical body. So I like to take my hands to the center of my chest. Some people like to take one to the chest, one to the belly. So whether I'm seated or standing, I'm feeling my points of contact with the ground. So since I'm seated now, I'm feeling my sit bones pressing down. I'm rising up through the spine and I can feel my hands on my chest. So that is something that I know to be true, right? And there's something I can trust in that. And that's actually a first step of like trusting what is real and what is happening now. And then I start to slowly just deepen the breath. So inhaling, allowing your belly to expand, allow your rib cage to broaden, and just breathing all the way up into the front and the back and sides of the heart. And holding it for a moment, and then opening your mouth and just letting it go. You can just continue like that a few rounds on your own. Maybe you do it 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, nice and slow. There's nothing you can do wrong. All right. What so often happens, we go into this mind of judgment.
Am I doing it right?
Yes. And that's what actually causes more anxiety and more depression. So it's just trust what is real. There's nothing I can do wrong. And then I switch the attention slightly to like, what is it I need right now? Like, and just name it. Like, maybe I just need some calm and peace. Or maybe I need some courage. So as I inhale, I breathe that in. I breathe in peace. I breathe in courage.
Right.
And then on the exhale, I breathe out whatever's blocking me from receiving that. So that could be a practice you do for 5 minutes or 5 breaths. And I promise you, if you do it every day for the next 40 days, you will see a massive shift from just that. And then for movement, come to any of my programs. I will take very good care of you. Get my book, Chakra Rituals. I will hold your hand for 7 weeks, moving you through the energy centers of the body. And we start with the foundation. We start with the root. We start with the physical body. And then we move up to the emotional body. We move up to our empowerment and to our confidence and our courage. And we move up into our heart and the space of love. We move up into the power of our voice and our creativity. We move up to our vision and our intuition and our inner knowing. And then our final step is when we really how we connect with the infinite expansion and we connect with God. And I offer a variety of practices and they're all micro practices. So 15 minutes or less, from mudra, the yoga of the hands, to meditation, to breath, to a little a mini yoga practice. I call them body prayers. And I did audio or video recordings for all of the practices that come with the book. So you could also practice along with my voice.
Sounds amazing. And before we take off, can you just tell the audience where we can find you if you want to drop a website, or because I know you're doing a lot of things all over the world, and it's an honor for you to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. The best place to reach me is, I'll give you 2, CristiChristensen.com. Just have to make sure you spell my name right because it's spelled a little different.
I know.
And then Instagram. Instagram is a great place to at least initiate. And then if you write me a DM, I'll write you back. And then I might say, let's take this to email so I don't lose it in the flow. But and my Instagram is Cristi_Christensen. And from both of those places, you'll find my book website, you'll find my programs, my in-person retreats, my online things. And hopefully I'll get to meet you somewhere in the world at some
Oh,
point.
that'd be awesome. All the links will be in the bio, guys.
Thank
Definitely
you.
check her out. I mean, you're doing some wonderful stuff, and
And buy my book.
yeah, I'll have that in
Available,
also.
it's
Yeah,
available everywhere where books are sold,
Amazon
basically.
too, I hope.
Amazon too. Yeah,
Okay.
that's, even though I know a lot of people don't want to support Amazon, but it's very easy to get on Amazon. And if
Yeah.
not, there's a great site called Indie Books,
Mhm.
and and on my book website, I have all these contacts on there, and you can literally type in your zip code, and it will let you order the book from a local bookstore. So
There
there's
you go.
many different routes to get it.
Well, thank you again so much. I've learned so much from you, and I'm really gonna try this myself because I've heard so much about it. I mean, I had a bad experience with the hot yoga,
Mhm.
1 hour where I was like feeling dizzy, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, maybe I should hold it back and maybe not do like such a hot room and
Yeah,
just do it
I'm
a
going to
normal
add one other
temperature.
thing to what we said about yoga is there's many, 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 many different kinds of yoga. If you found one because when I began yoga, I thought there was just one kind of yoga. No,
Mhm,
there's many different kinds of yoga. So if you find one you don't like, just try another one because I
mhm.
guarantee there is going to be one that you love.
Well, there you have it, guys. You're always welcome back, Christy, and
Thank
I
you.
wish you the best.
I will
Stay
be involved
tuned.
in the season.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And you guys stay tuned for the next episode and always keep moving forward. And we are out.
You're listening to the On Call Empath.